This video is going to introduce some of the basic concepts of modeling using polygons and NURBS in Maya, as well as some of the shortcuts and hotkeys for navigating around the viewport in Maya. You'll see the first screen that we're looking at right here is called the perspective view. In the perspective view, we have the ability to tumble and move around and look at objects in a three-dimensional environment. In the upper right corner of Maya, there's often what's called a view cube, and I purposely turned off my view cube so that way I could show you how to turn the view cube back on. So if you would, go to Window, go to Settings and Preferences, and choose Preferences. Underneath the categories on the left side is where there's a category called View Cube, and if you put a check mark next to the view cube, you'll notice up in the upper right corner of the viewport, you'll see the view cube is then appearing. While we're in the Preferences area, we're going to scroll down to the Undo category. On the Undo category, by default, Maya is set up to allow you to undo a finite number of 50 times. This includes all clicks and unclicks and selections and unselections. So your queue of 50 gets used up pretty quickly as soon as you start clicking and moving things around. So we want to make sure that we modify our undo container or category to infinite. Now you can press the Save button. Like all programs, the undo works for the duration that you have the file open. As soon as you close down the file, the history is essentially gone, and no undos are available when you relaunch Maya or reopen up the file at a later time. So the next thing we're going to do is model out a Polygon Sphere and a NURBS sphere. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the Create menu and go to the Polygon Primitives. Now you'll notice at the bottom here, my check mark for interactive creation has been turned off. We're going to leave it that way. So I'm going to go back up and choose Sphere. So this is a Polygon Sphere. And with interactive creation turned off, you'll notice in the center of the screen, a sphere has appeared, and it is a 1 unit size sphere. If you'll notice to the right side of the screen, where under Inputs it says the word Polysphere 1, you'll notice if you click on that word, it will expand down and show you that the radius of our sphere is set to 1 unit in size. Now I'm going to move the sphere off to the side because by default, when you have interactive creation turned off, all objects are added at the 0, 0, 0 quadrant of the plane. The Move tool is located in the left-hand sidebar with a cone. The shortcut key, and you'll notice in that pop-up tooltip, is the W. So either way, select the tool or press the W key. You'll notice 3 arrows are then appearing. There's a green arrow, which, if you look in the lower left corner, is associated with the Y axis. If you look at the red arrow, it is associated with the red or the X axis, and then the blue arrow is associated with the Z axis. When you're thinking about which direction is Z and which direction is Y, think about good old graph paper from geometry class. This is traditional or typical of what you would typically experience in that math class. Okay, so the way I've reorientated my display here is the Y is still pointing up, that's your Y direction. The X is pointing to the right, that's your positive side direction. If you look at your view cube says front, and therefore the Z is pointing towards you. So if you are going to move it in the positive direction towards you, you would use the blue arrow to move it forward. If you hover in the upper right corner of the view cube, you'll see there's a home button there, and that is how you can reorientate yourself to the default plane. Noticeably, I've tumbled a few times, and the method of doing this is to hold down your Alt key on your keyboard and then use your typical left mouse button and click and drag, and that will allow you to tumble your stage area. If you ever get lost, topsy-turvy, you can always hover in the upper right corner where the view cube is located, press your home, and this will take you back to default placement. So I'm going to move this sphere off to the side. I'm going to move it in the negative X direction. You'll notice in the channel box, and the channel box for me is already opened. If you don't have it opened, it's going to be the upper right icon at the top right underneath the red X. There's an icon there that will show you the narrow one is called the channel box, and the wider one is called the attribute editor. So we're going to stick with the channel box. Okay, so we move this in the negative x direction. You'll see where it says translate x. This has been moved approximately -7 units on the x direction. The next thing I'm going to do is create myself a NURBS sphere. So click on create, go to NURBS primitives, and once again we're going to uncheck interactive creation, so there will be no check mark there. Now I have to go back into that create menu, go to NURBS primitives, and click on sphere. Again, to repeat, all objects with interactive creation turned off get added to the 0, 0 quadrant, and they all get added as a size of 1 unit. In this case, it's 1 radius unit, which is 2 in diameter. So you'll see in the stage area, we've got 2 spheres, the left one being the polygon, the right one being the NURBS sphere. If we were to want to zoom in a little closer to these, again, you can Alt left mouse button to tumble. You can Alt right mouse button to dolly or to zoom in a little closer. If you have a wheel on your mouse, you can always wheel in. And then if you want to scooch, or what's called track, using your Alt key and your middle mouse wheel, press on the wheel. Don't scrub it, but press on it. This allows you to move your stage to the left and to the right to track it. Your objects themselves are not moving. All you're doing is moving the view, so that way you can see your objects in a different angle or a different direction. Alright, so another shortcut key. Right now what we're looking at is called wireframe mode. You'll notice that if you attempt to click on an object while it's in wireframe mode, if I attempt to click it between the wireframes themselves, which I am attempting to do right here, it's not selecting. You actually have to click on the wireframe itself in order for the wireframe to select the object. Okay. Likewise, the same thing for the polygon. A little bit more challenging because there's more subdivisions in this, but if I click in between the wireframes, nothing gets selected. If I click on the wireframe or the sphere will get selected. So the solution to that difficult clicking is to turn on what's called smooth shading. You can use the number 5 key on your keyboard. Number 5 key will turn on smooth shading. Number 4 key will let you go back to wireframe mode. Or the sub panel by the viewport where it says shading, the second radio button says smooth shade all. And so we can turn on smooth shade all. So 4 and 5 is your toggle, or shading, wireframe, shading, smooth shade all. Either way gets you to the same place. Now, the point of pointing this out is that now when I go to click on the NURBS sphere on the right side, anywhere I click on this, whether it was the wireframe or not, my object is then selectable. Okay, same thing for the Polygon sphere. Anywhere you click on there is selectable. Basically, the smooth shade all is given your object area. It's given its surface that you can actually select the whole object. All right. Again, our object on the left-hand side is the polygon. The object on the right is the NURBS. If I shift-click on both of them, you'll see both of them selected at the same time. So click, shift, click. That will allow you to select both things. One of them will turn into a white wireframe. The other one will have a green wireframe. It's just letting you know the last selected object is going to be the green one. That was the last one that I selected there. You can select more than 2 objects, obviously. All of those other objects would then be white wireframes, and the last objects you select is going to have the green wireframe. All right, so a visual difference between the 2 different spheres we have here. The left side is the polygon. What makes this have so many lines, and why does the NURB have so many lines over here on the right-hand side? So on the left side, the polygon, what we have when if we were to look at this object, if you click off, click on, right-click and hold on top of this, you'll see that there are some distinct differences between these 2 objects and how they're created. The polygon, you can select edges. If you hover over the polygon, you'll see that if you hover over there, those are you selecting the edges. If you right-click and hold, you can go into vertex mode. You barely can see all the little purple dots here, but each little cross-section of edges creates you a vertice. So those are your vertices or vertex. And then your other choice is select faces. So when you hover over a face, not just the line, not just the cross-section, but the actual face itself can then be selected. What can you do with this? Well, you can deform your object. You can do some cool things. Okay? So that's a polygons in a nutshell. Polygons are great for exporting into game engines, whereas NURBS are not. So if you're building something for a video game engine, you'll want to stick with polygons. that's how a game engine is able to import those assets into its engine. Now the NURBS, if you zoom in closely to this, you can see there's far less lines, and if we right-click and hold on top of it, those same choices are no longer there. What we have for a NURBS is called a control vertice, and a control vertice you can kind of see hovers around, or it's like a glow around the sphere itself. They're not actually attached to there, and so you have a little bit more lopsy effect that you're making on the object. So it's modifying it, but from a very larger scale of deforming it versus one face at a time. Okay, so this is going to be your NURBS object. In addition, you also have surface points, which again are not available on the Polygon. These are just different areas in which you can modify your object and insert different surface points and make adjustments to your objects. So NURBS are likely what you would see Mickey Mouse being made out of, or a lot of the cartoon-like movies that you're seeing with Frozen and some of the different movies that you may have seen. Those are going to be using, have the opportunity to use NURBS objects, not saying that they are, because certainly you can do them in polygons as well. Just simply NURBS you cannot import into a game engine, whereas polygons you can. Alright, so any changes that I've made, if I want to undo them, simply pressing the Z key will undo any kind of modifications. No need to Control Z, just simply press the Z key. Alt left mouse button is your tumble. If you wanted to turn off the move tool, so right now everything that I've selected, I can select multiple things at one time and both of them would move together. That's using the move tool, the W key. Now if I wanted to scale an object, whether it be a NURBS or a poly, does not make a difference. The hotkey for it is the R key, or you can press the button right here. And you'll notice that the shapes turn from arrows, like the move tool, they turn into cubes. And so now I can non-proportionally adjust the scale of an object. If I select on the green, the red, or in this case, it was the blue, it's now the yellow. Or if you go to the center of it, you can proportionally increase the scale of an object. And you'll notice over here on the right-hand side, the volume change is showing you what the scale is in all three directions. The same exact tools are available for the poly, so no difference in how the tools are applied to the poly versus the NURB in this case. Okay? And then the other tool worth mentioning, move was the W key, scale was the R key. So guess in between is the E key, and the E key is going to be your rotate tool. So you'll notice that there might be like a little glow effect there. I'm going to make the tool a little bit bigger by pressing my plus sign. That's the plus sign. And you'll see that there's some rings going around there. And again, if you want to adjust it on the X direction, match the color, it was red. And you'll see as I'm moving the red, the rotate X on the right side channel box is also adjusting. If I move this one right here, this is going to be adjusting the Z as well as the Y because I've got gimbal lock. Okay, ignore that. Let's try this again. So now as I adjust this one, it should only be adjusting the Z, and then obviously the green one here going around the center is called the Y. And so those are all the different rotational axes you can use. The big one on the outside, if I were to adjust this big one, you'll notice on the right hand side in the channel box, it is adjusting it on the X, Y, and Z all at the same time. Try to avoid doing this ever. Any kind of animation that has a three directional change happening at the same time usually defaults into some bizarre animation taking place that we have to go back and fix. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to undo using the Z key, so I have my rotation set back. I certainly can always come back into here in the channel box, and if I wanted to rotate in all three directions at the same time at 30 degrees, I certainly could. Just type in 30 and all three directions would have it. And then of course to go back to where we came from, typing in 0, you could modify it on one direction at a time as well. So that basically sums up using the wireframe is the F key or the 4 key, the smooth shade all is the 5 key, the move tool is the W key, the rotate tool is the E key, and the scale tool is the R key. So that pretty much sums up the different hotkeys and the tools that we have over here on the left hand side, as well as the difference between what a poly sphere looks like in comparison to a NURB sphere. To get out of any of these tools, which I always advise my students to get out of one of these tools so you don't accidentally scale or move things around by accident, you press the Q key. Objects are selectable, we can do a whole lot of things with them, but we can't move, adjust, scale, rotate, etc. It's a good place to be. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Take care.